It's the very first episode of the Matt Sager podcast of the year 2019, January 1st. Welcome to a brand new year. Hopefully it's going to be a better one. This last one was a bit rocky at times. So here's to bigger and better things for all of us. One thing we can do, I'm not going to delve deep into stuff like resolutions and stuff, maybe in a later episode. But we can examine ourselves and question the importance of things that outrage us. Because, one of the problems in the media, I'm not talking about the news the way many people do when they refer to anything they're upset about in the media. I'm talking about like Star Wars fans, comic fans, in general, fandom. It is very often the case that if they take issue with the plot, the writing, the art, the performance of any of these mediums that they're fond of, because this is the age of outrage and because this is the age of the internet and because we've learned a lot of unpleasant things about ourselves as a species these last couple of years, that we can be really nasty and spiteful and hateful and, revel in cruelty and hate. That is true, but anytime someone calls out a failing of the type I've just listed, they are almost without exception referred to as toxic, occasionally as psychotic, just really besmirched. And I do not doubt that many of the people who levy that criticism, that charge on fans, I don't doubt that in many instances they believe it. But if they have any self-awareness at all, they know that in delegitimizing any complaint and lumping all complaints in with those that are toxic, because there are, some of those negative lessons that we as a species, the human race, have learned these last couple of years is that there are terrible trolls among us and that they're omnipresent and are way too powerful. But by lumping a legitimate critic in with those people, you're doing a couple of things. One, you're delegitimizing actual criticism. You're making yourself bulletproof. And in doing so, you're making it impossible to ever improve. And you would think people want a better product. There was a day and age in which companies paid money. You could just walk in off the street and they give you $100 to review, to give your opinion about products they were considering, products that are already out there. And they were very specific. We're not here for flattery. Tell us if we're doing well. Tell us what you don't like about us if you don't like us. Now it's just there's a firewall. There are review embargoes on movies and an extraordinary amount of attention paid to the real toxic fans in an attempt to create a narrative that all criticism is from the alt-right, is from racists and sexists and homophobes and all the worst that humanity has to offer. The entertainment industry as a whole has been looking for new and creative ways to stifle criticism for decades. This is not new. It's simply the way that they're carrying out this delegitimization that's new. And the worst part about it is, knowingly or unknowingly, in calling all fans toxic, they give an enormous amount of attention, hits, clicks, etc. to those toxic fans. Because if Joe Schmo goes, oh, I hated this issue of this book because this happened in it, they go, oh, you're just like that YouTuber, thereby giving that YouTuber tons of free publicity. So I question that strategy. And I think today I've really turned a corner in disliking the toxic fandom canard. Because again, it does exist. But there are many times when it's not called out, times when it's ridiculous, times when it is absolutely toxic. But because it doesn't besmirch something that someone's trying to sell, because it doesn't critique an artist or a writer, thereby potentially affecting their public image and career, then they just allow people to be crazy and toxic and not comment on it. Because if you'd like to discuss a real incident of toxic fandom, over Christmas, maybe the dumbest argument I've ever seen took place. Certainly the dumbest non-political argument. So on Christmas Day, Netflix gives a present to the world by adding Avengers Infinity War to their lineup. People had been clamoring for this, begging for this. And Netflix said, listen, as soon as we can, we will. And so on Christmas Day, what a wonderful gift. Avengers Infinity War. As we prepare with excitement for Avengers Endgame, we can rewatch. Or if somehow we failed to see it the first time around in theaters, we can now all watch Avengers Infinity War for free in our underpants or pajamas, anytime, day or night, as part of our Netflix subscription. Now, you would think there would be a big outcry of thank you. And perhaps there was such an outcry, but I'm not aware of it. What I am aware of is that people freaked out, just lost their minds when they saw the description that accompanies the film. All of Netflix's properties, be it their own original content and programming, or be it films like Avengers Infinity War or TV shows like The Gilmore Girls, they all get their own description written by someone at Netflix. And so the description that accompanied Avengers Infinity War was, quote, superheroes amass to stop intergalactic sociopath Thanos from acquiring a full set of Infinity Stones and wiping out half of all life in the universe. I don't see anything wrong there. That is a very accurate description of Avengers Infinity War, one that says exactly what the movie is about, who the villain is, who sets the events of the movie in motion, and is overall unoffensive. There are a couple of Netflix descriptions out there, like I believe Gossip Girl. There was some big incident with that a few years ago. They added that to their lineup, and whoever wrote the copy, it was something to the effect of two obnoxious people argue incessantly about the same stupid topic, but they're pretty, so let's all get excited and watch. Like, it was really insulting and condescending. I don't see anything wrong with the description for Avengers Infinity War, and in fact, I would call it completely accurate. Spoiler-free, not at all biased, like, for instance, the Gossip Girl description I referred to. And yet, fans collectively lost their goddamn minds. On Twitter, with emails sent to Netflix, calling them and harassing them. People said you can't call Thanos a sociopath, and I guess they had different reasons as to why they felt this. The main one appears to be, and this is very troubling, that they were sort of rushing to his defense, that they felt he'd been unfairly labeled a sociopath. Just because, he, spoiler alert, killed half of all life in the universe, including kittens, puppies, horses, emus, family members, parents, kids. That is a sociopathic set of actions. And his rationalization for these actions, along with the way he performed before and after these actions, is right in line with the sociopath. And so apparently, I say apparently because on my Netflix screen, that description still stands. However, on, I believe, the 29th, after 4 days of this bullshit, Netflix rewrote the description accompanying Infinity War. It now read, quote, invader, annihilator, so-called savior. As Thanos moves ever closer to omnipotence, the fate of the universe rests with the Avengers. Now, that is also true. Why the uproar? Why the need to bother with this change? It's not clear to me. I know that some people felt that just as a medical condition, as a mental illness, sociopathy did not fit Thanos. I would say that that is incorrect. If that's why there's an outcry, I'm happy to correct the record and say, yes, Thanos is certainly a sociopath. For the record, this is from healthyplace.com. That has taken a lot of research papers and stuff from like the DSM handbook that psychiatrists and psychologists use to describe the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath. People use those words incorrectly all the time, calling a psychopath a sociopath when really they're psychopaths. Now, unless you're the one doing the labeling or receiving the labeling, or you're a bigwig in the mental health field and you're seeing this in medical documents and reports and coverage, you have no reason to care. But for the record, if you're angry because you think Thanos is not a sociopath, well, let's see. Again, healthyplace.com. What is a sociopath? Well, let's take a look at psychopath versus sociopath. Psychopathy, they say, can be thought of as a more severe form of sociopathy with more symptoms. Therefore, all psychopaths are sociopaths, but not all sociopaths are necessarily psychopaths. According to the Society for the Study of Psychopathy, boy, that must be a fun place to work. Psychopath traits include a lack of guilt and remorse, a lack of empathy, a lack of deep emotional attachments, narcissism, superficial charm, dishonesty, manipulativeness, and reckless risk-taking. So, some other really important traits that help you define a sociopath, not only in diagnosing them in the first place, but also in differentiating them from psychopaths. All psychopaths have very little in the way of empathy or guilt. They also don't bond with other people. Sociopaths can form deep bonds, and they're slightly less emotionless when it comes to empathy. They can exhibit a tiny fraction of guilt from time to time. It's not a normal level. It is closer to being a psychopath than to being a regular Joe. But again, these are behavior patterns specific to sociopaths. Now again, going down that list, lack of guilt and remorse, but the ability to feel a little bit of it, well, that suits Thanos pretty well. Think about Gamora. He decimated her planet. Before he got the Infinity Stones, he was just a guy who, with his army, his Black Order, hopped from planet to planet, doing all the dirty work with his hands, murdering 50% of the population. Now, that is what you would call a dearth of guilt and remorse. Now, that said, as he's murdering her parents right in front of her, he meets tiny little baby girl Gamora and decides, apparently on a whim, that he's going to adopt her into a life of cruelty and murder, and one that she eventually flees from, but he is capable of forming a bond. He's also capable of, in pursuit of his own selfish goals, big spoiler alert here, of murdering her. Why? Because his own personal desires and misguided sense of balance, this dumb idea that, the only way to bring balance is killing half of everything. Not really sure why, but let's just go with that. Therefore, I would call Thanos also a tremendous narcissist, another trait very common to sociopaths. He believes he's on a holy mission. Everyone else in the universe believes he's simply a mass murderer. If you're the only one in the entire universe who believes what you believe, and your belief involves a need to carry out genocide, you might be a sociopath. I would say the term sociopath is 100% spot on accurate for Thanos. And more disturbingly is that there were these complaints at all to begin with. I think the health of all of us mentally has been impacted by these last few years as discourse is broken down, social media continues to expand exponentially, but doing so while being populated by all kinds of bad actors, propagandists, people launching cyber war, people from, say, Russia sowing discord and seeing our weaknesses and our ability to get mad at each other over nothing and amping them up with fake news, fake ads, entire websites that are just fronts for psyops. So perhaps that can explain why a group of fans would feel such outrage over a Netflix description of Avengers Infinity War. Why that would be their first thought rather than, hey, great, I get to watch Infinity War at home now. That is the kind of behavior I would call troubling. I wouldn't call it sociopathy or even psychopathy, but I would call it kind of borderline. A little bit close. If you care enough that you're hassling people about the way a monster, a villain, a mass murderer of the kind, I don't think I've ever seen a movie where a guy killed this many people. To take umbrage with the term sociopath, and to do this beginning on Christmas, as opposed to just turning on the movie and watching and enjoying it. You know, I gotta be honest, I don't even read the description, unless it's something that has been, you sometimes get these Netflix pop-ups and say, new for you, Matt, we think you might like this series. If I know nothing at all about it, then in some cases, I will read the description. But generally speaking, any Marvel movie, I would never read the description. I know what it's about. I just want to watch it. The most disturbing possibility I can think of as to why fans would be behaving this way is that just because Josh Brolin does such a good job as Thanos of looking soulful some of the time, as appearing to be remorseful some of the time, as shedding one single tear when he murders his daughter, that somehow is not indicative of a sociopath. Well, first of all, again, assuming that these arguments are right, which they're not, who gives a fuck? Why bother anybody with your opinion about this, let alone do so in droves? What drove people to be this manic about this? In any case, I think we need to pick and choose our battles a bit more carefully. There is enough hatred and discord and division in this country and among fandom. There's way too much of it, and I think we ought to acknowledge that. I know I just said, toxic fans, it's a term you use way too often, and it is overused. And I believe that's exactly why toxic shit like this is able to proliferate in this manner, because no one's calling them out. Because again, you haven't criticized a writer or a director or a filmmaker, someone with a personal reputation at stake. So they're not going to comment at the next convention panel or at their next interview on one of these websites like CBR or Newsarama. No one's going to say this was neurotic, crazy, toxic behavior. And they should, because it is. And it's a new year. So let's all just be a little bit more self-aware and realize that I believe the book is called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all small stuff. That is certainly the case with Netflix offerings. No reason to get this upset about them. Anyway, welcome to 2019, and I invite you to get in touch with the Matt Sager podcast. You can email me, matt@mattsager.com, or call 646-535-4788. You can also get me on Twitter. I'm @MattSager. On Instagram, I'm Real Matt Sager. And on Facebook, I'm all over the place. I've got my personal page, The Matt Sager, my voiceover page, Matt Sager VO, and of course, this podcast page. If you're a listener, then by all means, you should be liking and joining that page. It's facebook.com/Matt Sager Podcast. As for everything else, my voiceover reels, contact information, articles and blog posts, archive back episodes of this podcast, and more, you can find all that at mattsagervoiceover.com. And in the description, I just said I never read descriptions, but I do read them for podcasts. In the description for my own podcast tonight, you can see links to my Patreon and my merch store from my very good friends at wehavemerch.com.